On this week's episode of the podcast, Credit Repair, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner with Yesner Law. And as always, the podcast is brought to you by my law firm, Yesner Law, and also by the book that I wrote called Crushing Debt, 9 Strategies to Eliminate the Financial Bullies in Your Life. I would really appreciate it if you all would go on to Amazon.com and check out a copy of the book. I go into different strategies to eliminate IRS debt, student loan debt, mortgage debt, all types of different debts, whether you want to do loan modifications, short sales. I talk about bankruptcy, all different strategies to eliminate those financial bullies in your life. The book is available on Amazon.com right now. And I've been running a little bit of a promotion over the last couple of weeks. And so what I would really appreciate, if you guys go online and leave the law firm an honest review, whether that's positive, negative, as long as it's an honest review, leave the law firm a review. Take a picture and send me your screenshot and send me a picture of that review. What I'll do is I'll then turn around and I will mail you a free copy of the Crushing Debt book. And so if you want a copy of the book, go online, leave the firm an honest review, take a screenshot and send it to me. Leave the review on Facebook or on Google. Take a screenshot and send it to me. And with that, I will send you a free copy of the book. So like you heard in the title, in the introduction, I wanted to talk today about credit repair. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk about credit repair, clients will come to me with debt questions and they'll say, but how will this affect my credit? And I think credit is one of the last things you really want to be worried about in a situation where you've come to see me to get you out of debt. And so if you're in foreclosure, your credit's being beaten up. If you're being sued by credit card companies, your credit has taken a hit. All the different things that I help with typically hurt your credit. And on top of that, getting you out of the debt will also hurt your credit. Now, I've had this conversation with a couple people where they say, do I have to be current in order to negotiate away my debt? Or do I have to be behind, rather, in order to negotiate away my debt? And the way that I answer that question, I will never tell anybody to fall behind intentionally. I will never tell anybody to fall behind in order to make themselves look better for getting out of the debt. However, I will say this. The bank has no incentive to negotiate with you if you are current. If you're current on your payments, the bank really does not see any type of hardship. Now, you may call them and say, I lost my job, or my spouse died, or I had this medical issue, or this, that, the other thing that is a legitimate reason for falling behind on your mortgage payments, or credit card payments. But the problem is that the banks don't see that as a hardship unless or until you're actually behind. So again, let me be clear. My legal advice is that I cannot tell you to intentionally fall behind on a payment, either to a credit card or a mortgage company or any creditor. I cannot legally or ethically or morally give you advice to fall behind on that debt. However, I've never had a situation where the bank has negotiated that debt, either a foreclosure, short sale, or loan modification in a mortgage situation, or a debt negotiation in an unsecured or credit card situation. I've never been able to resolve one of those situations when the loan is current. I only have been able to negotiate those situations when the loan is behind. So take that information and use it as you will, whether you decide to catch up or fall behind or stay current or fall behind or whatever. But what that does if you do decide to fall behind in order to negotiate away the debt, that causes your credit to take a hit. And on top of that, there's really no way to negotiate away that debt, whether it be modification or short sale or just settled on a payment plan or whatever. There's no way to get rid of that debt without your credit suffering. And so when people come to me and they say, how will this affect my credit? Unfortunately, the issue is I don't really know. I don't really pay attention. I don't really care, for lack of a better word. My job is to get rid of the liability. My job is to get rid of the bank pursuing you for the payment. Whatever happens to credit, in my mind, credit can recover. Now, I have created some really good relationships with some credit repair companies in the area. And for those of you really worried about your credit, I would also suggest to you Swipe the podcast. It's done by our friend Polly Bauer, Jarek, but Polly and Jarek and Laura Lively and Neil Galarte and all those guys that manage and run and create the content and promote Swipe the Podcast. That's a great podcast for you guys to listen to for situations where you may be worried about your credit, worried about how to keep your credit up, worried about credit card intelligence, worried about accountability around credit. I definitely suggest you check out Polly's show, which is called Swipe the Podcast. They are great friends of the Crushing Debt podcast. They've been on my show multiple times. I've been on their show multiple times. Huge fan. But what I really wanted to talk about today was credit repair companies. Now, in my bankruptcy practice, what I do is when someone gets their discharge, they get a letter from me. So when the bankruptcy is successfully completed, they get a letter from me. And the letter says, congratulations on your bankruptcy discharge. Your case is now over. Here's what to do next. Contact, and I list 2 or 3 different credit repair companies that I have relationships with. And so now that the bankruptcy is over, contact these credit repair companies to see about cleaning up your credit, getting your credit repaired so that you can buy things on credit and you can start to rebuild and have that credit cushion in case you need it. Now, I don't want to have people get discharged and then run out and get credit cards and run up those credit cards, because then, unfortunately, they become repeat clients of mine. And I know I've done blog posts and I know I've done podcast episodes about the time in between filing cases. So if you get your discharge and someone does give you credit and you go up and run up that credit card, you may not be able to file again for about 8 years, depending on what chapter you're going to file to get rid of that debt. So I don't really recommend that, but maybe go out and get a secured card and charge gas that week, charge groceries that week. And then at the end of the month, pay off that credit card, or actually with a secured card, you're actually replenishing the secured amount on the card. That is a way to rebuild your credit. But I also do give my clients the names of 2 or 3 different credit repair companies in the area. And I've had a lot of these representatives on my show. And so Delta Credit Restoration is one of them. There's another one that escapes me right now. But I've had all these different companies from time to time on the show. Here's what you want to be careful about when you're looking at restoring or repairing your credit. There's a concept in the credit repair industry that the credit reporting companies cannot get in trouble as long as they're reporting credit accurately. So as long as what they report is accurate, they can't get in trouble for it. And so if you owe the debt and they report that you owe the debt, that's okay. I'll give you an example from my personal history. So I had 4 student loans, consolidated those into 2 student loans. And when I checked my credit, I had 6 student loans on my credit, the 4 old ones and the 2 new ones. So what I decided to do was I sent a letter to the student loan companies and I sent a letter to the credit repair companies, and I said, hey guys, these 2 new student loans paid off the old 4 student loans, and so therefore you should wipe that from my credit. And they did, because the information was inaccurate. And so credit repair companies can delete inaccurate information, but they can't do anything for accurate information. So for example, credit repair companies that say that they can eliminate a bankruptcy, if you're just discharged from the bankruptcy, so you filed the bankruptcy in January, you got your discharge in April, they're not going to be able, these credit repair companies are not going to be able to eliminate that bankruptcy in May. It's going to take a little bit of time in order to get that bankruptcy off your credit. They're not going to be able to do it immediately. Now, I know there are credit repair people that are fans of the show, and they're all probably yelling at me through their podcast player or wherever they're listening to this episode that yes, absolutely, they can do it. So let me give you how they do it. There's a concept under the Fair Credit Reporting Act that if you send an inquiry to the credit repair agency and the credit repair agency does not respond within a certain period of time, then that line item has to come off your credit. Now, what happens is the credit repair agency then goes and verifies the information and then puts it back on your credit. So what these credit repair companies are doing is they're taking things off your credit temporarily so that you can get whatever loan you're trying to get. And then these things pop back onto your credit. So they're not really fixing anything. So that's something that you need to be careful about when you're trying to choose a credit repair company. Are they promising to take things off your credit that are inaccurate? Or are they promising to hammer the credit reporting agency with letters so that the credit reporting agency has to remove stuff from your credit temporarily? If it's the latter, if they're just hammering the credit reporting agency with letters, I would avoid that credit repair company, and I would go with the credit repair company that only promises to take false stuff off of your credit. Another trick of the credit repair companies is that they will make all these promises, but then they won't follow through on what they're supposed to do. So you really want to do your due diligence when you're choosing a credit repair company. One that says we're going to sue under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Well, they're not attorneys, so they can't sue, but they can refer to people like me who can sue under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. One of the other things that you want to look out for is when the credit repair company says, we're going to send these disputes to the credit reporting agencies. Well, the problem is by sending the disputes directly to the agencies, you're bypassing the original creditor. The original creditor is the one who's going to say that the information is accurate or inaccurate. The original creditor, or the creditor that's reporting on the credit reports, is the one that's going to say, here's the accurate information, here's the inaccurate information. So if the credit repair agency that you're talking to is saying we're going to go to the credit agencies, that may not be entirely correct. They should be going to the companies that are reporting on credit in order to get those negative references removed. So you want to be careful about that, is who are these credit repair companies going to in order to remove the debt. For a little while there, I actually considered starting a credit repair company, but the industry has a little bit of a black eye, and there are some good companies out there trying to erase that black eye, but unfortunately, there are other agencies out there that have given the industry a little bit of a black eye, and it was a little bit too much for me to get involved with. So I've decided to stay in my lane as the attorney, and if you've got inaccurate information on your credit report, let me know. I can either refer you to a credit repair agency that I know does it correctly, or I can write letters to the credit reporting agencies to see if I can get some of that inaccurate information removed. But I think you need to be careful about the credit repair companies that you work with to make sure that they're doing things correctly. Make sure that they're not taking your money and not really doing anything, taking the debt off temporarily where it just pops back on. I would avoid those types of credit repair agencies. Make sure that they are only trying to eliminate legitimate debt that should be eliminated, legitimate entries that should be eliminated, entries that are false, entries that are inaccurate. Those are the people that you should be working with. Those are the people that you should be giving your money to. So I think that's really all I wanted to say in this week's episode of the podcast. I know it's a little bit of a short episode, but I think the point there is you've got issues on your credit. Try to remove the stuff that's inaccurate. You may not be able to remove the stuff that's accurate, but with the passage of time, the stuff that is accurate that may be negatively affecting your credit will eventually fall off, leaving only the good stuff behind. And so your credit score will improve and your credit score will get better. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this week's episode of the podcast. Again, if you want a free copy of the Crushing Debt podcast book, or the Crushing Debt book, 9 Strategies to Eliminate the Financial Bullies in Your Life, go ahead and leave the law firm a positive review, or actually any review, an honest review, on either Google or Facebook. Take a screenshot of that review, send it to me. I will then get your address, and I will then mail you a free copy of the book. So that's it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast, and I look forward to talking to you in next week's episode.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.